All right, guys, so now we're going to do a really small project. It's going to be a joke generator, but I want you to do this as a challenge. So I want you to try it without following along first and see if you can get it, because it's all stuff we've already done. So basically, we have an API, and the documentation is at this URL, and it's basically just Chuck Norris jokes. So there's different endpoints down here to get jokes. You can specify like a category and stuff like that, but the endpoint that we're going to use is this right here, joke/random. Okay, and all that's going to give us, actually I can click on this here and it'll show you what it gives us. Gives us a property of value, and that's where the joke is. So that's the only data that we need. We don't need the updated at or icon URL or any of that. Basically, you just want to make a request and get this value and put it into the DOM. Okay, you want to put it here where it says loading. So make that happen when you come to the page, so that when you come to the page it shows a joke, and then add an event listener so that when you click this it makes another request and replaces the old joke with the new joke. All right, so it's pretty simple. We already have all the HTML and CSS. You don't have to worry about any of that. That'll be in the starter files, and just try it out. If you can't do it, that's absolutely fine. Just follow along and you can see how it's done. All right, so do that now and come back. All right, so let's close this up and let's take a look at the index HTML, which is very simple. Basically, we have a div here with the ID of joke, also has a class of joke for styling, but if you want to grab onto the class in the JavaScript, that's fine. So we know we have to bring that in. Then we also have a button with the ID of joke btn. So we want to bring both of those in. And then we want to have an event listener that we click, that fires off an event to get the joke and then put it in the DOM. So let's jump into our script file, and I'm going to bring in those two elements. So this one I'm going to call it joke EL for joke element. And then let's do document. I'm going to use get element by ID, and that has an ID of joke. Okay, and then we're going to copy that down and joke btn. Let's call this joke btn. All right, now I'm going to add my event listener. So let's say joke button dot add event listener, and we're going to listen for a click. When that happens, let's call a function called generate joke. All right, and then we'll come up here and let's create that. I'll use an arrow function just to switch things up a little bit. So let's say generate joke. Okay, and then for now, let's just do a console log 1, 2, 3. And then we'll open this up. Click on the button, we get 1, 2, 3. All right, now we need to make a request. So just like from last video, we're going to create an XHR object, say new XML HTTP request. Then we want to call open, so xhr.open. We're making a get request, and then the endpoint is going to be https api.chucknorris.io/jokes/random. So that's the endpoint. Now we want to use the onReadyState change event. So we want to create a handler for that. So let's say xhr.onReadyStateChange, set that to a function. Now remember the ready state, we want to make sure that that's at 4, meaning that the response is done and we have the response text value. So let's say if, and we'll say this dot ready state, if that is equal to 4. All right, now instead of doing and checking the status, I'm going to have a nested if for the status. So let's say this dot status is equal to 200, then that's successful. But I also want to put an else for the status, because if the status is not 200, then I want to just show, something went wrong or something like that. Now, just to show you again what this gives us, I'm going to grab that and go to that URL. So all we're interested in is the value property, right? We don't care about none of this other stuff. Value is the actual joke. So let's take the joke element, and let's set the inner HTML, and we want to set it to that value. Now, we first need to parse it, so let's say json.parse, and then we want to pass in this dot response text, right? Now that's going to be the object itself. In fact, I'm going to comment this out and just do a console log of this dot response text. And if we come back over here and I click the button, oh, we didn't send it. So just want to make sure that after the on ready state change, we do xhr.send, or else nothing's going to happen. So if I click the button now, you'll see that I'm getting back. I'm already parsing it, so I'm getting back. No, I'm not parsing it. So it's just a string, but it looks like an object, right? I want to parse it so that it is an actual object. So if I say json.parse and wrap that, and then I click on the button, then I get an actual object. And you can see it has all these values, but again, all we care about is the value prop. And I don't really like that they used value. That's kind of weird, because a lot of time you think of value, you think of that as the whole thing, right? Not just one property. So they should have used like a text or a joke, something like that. But again, this goes back to what I was talking about when you have to understand the API. You have to understand what you're getting back. So that's what we want, is the value. And actually I could console log json.parse this response text and then dot value, and that will give me the actual joke, right? So if I click that again, then I get just the joke. So that's what we want. So let's comment that out, uncomment this out, because we're setting the inner HTML of the joke element to the parsed object and then dot value. Okay, else, so if it's not a status of 200 and something goes wrong, then let's take the joke element and let's set the inner HTML, and we'll just set it to a string and say something went wrong, and we'll say not funny. All right, and that should do it. So let's save that. Now, the way we have it right now, I do have to click the button, but once I click that, we should get a joke. When Chuck Norris walks into a party, everyone immediately has an orgasm, even the men. So, I mean, these are pretty stupid, but it doesn't matter. It's what we're doing that matters. But yeah, so we should get all of these jokes. Now, if I reload, it still says loading, and obviously we don't want that. So what we'll do is just call this, let's come down here and let's add another event for when the DOM loads. So we'll say document dot add event listener, and the event we want to listen for is DOM content loaded, and when that happens we'll call generate joke. So now I'll save, and as soon as we come to the page, you might see loading flash for a second, but that's okay because it's loading, and then we see a joke, and then we can click and we can get another joke. All right, so pretty simple. Now, just to show you, if I were to mess this URL up, like let's just put a 1 in here and then save, we get something went wrong, not funny. And it just shows us down here that we're getting a 404. And the reason for that is we made a request to the API, but the endpoint that we put in is not found, right? So it gives us a 404 status. And the reason we're seeing this something went wrong, is because we checked for the status here. If it's 200, then we're putting the actual joke in. If it's not, which in this case it's not, it's 404, then we're putting this in. So you always want to think of your error handling, and we'll get more into error handling as time goes on. So I'm just going to put this back to how it was. And if you didn't get this, like if you weren't able to do this on your own, that's absolutely fine. As long as you follow along and you understand it now, that's what really matters. All right, so in the next video, we're going to talk about something called callback hell.